What if I told you that the biggest debate in human history isn't just philosophical, it's mathematical? What if the question of God isn't only about faith or emotion but about probability, logic, and numbers so precise they border on impossible? For centuries, people have argued about religion versus atheism using feelings, culture, and personal experience. But today, we're stepping into a different battlefield, the world of mathematics. Because when you look at the universe through the lens of probability theory, fine-tuning constants, and cosmological equations, the question changes. It's no longer do you believe, it becomes, what does the math say? Atheism often presents itself as the rational default. The claim is simple. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Since God cannot be physically measured or experimentally verified, disbelief becomes the logical stance. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. But mathematics is not limited to laboratory experiments. Probability theory allows us to evaluate unseen causes. Statistics allows us to measure likelihood. And when applied to the origin of the universe, something shocking emerges. The odds begin to look astronomically small. Let's begin with the fine-tuning problem. Modern cosmology tells us that the universe operates according to precise physical constants, numbers embedded into the fabric of reality. The gravitational constant, the cosmological constant, the strength of the electromagnetic force, the ratio between electron and proton mass. These aren't flexible sliders. If even one of them were altered by a fraction so tiny it defies imagination, life would be impossible. Not unlikely. Impossible. For example, physicists estimate that if the cosmological constant were different by just 1 part in 10,120, galaxies would never form. To put that in perspective, that's a 1 followed by 120 zeros. It's a number so large that if you wrote a 0 on every atom in the observable universe, you still wouldn't reach it. Now here's the mathematical question. When something incredibly precise exists, what is the most rational explanation? There are typically 3 possibilities. First, necessity, meaning it had to be this way. Second, chance, meaning we got lucky. Third, design, meaning an intelligent cause calibrated it. Many atheistic explanations rely heavily on chance, often invoking the multiverse theory, the idea that countless universes exist, each with different constants, and we simply happen to be in the one that works. But here's the issue. The multiverse itself is not empirically verified. It is a theoretical proposal designed to solve the fine-tuning problem. In other words, it's an explanation introduced to avoid design. Mathematically speaking, multiplying unproven universes to escape improbability raises its own probability problem. Probability theory teaches us something important. When an event's likelihood becomes astronomically small, rational inference shifts. If you flip a coin and get heads 10 times in a row, that's unlikely but possible. If you flip it 1,000,000 times and get heads every time, you don't assume luck, you assume interference. You assume design or manipulation. The fine-tuning constants are not 10 heads in a row. They are trillions upon trillions of perfectly aligned outcomes occurring simultaneously. At what point does appealing to chance stop being rational? Then comes the origin of the universe itself. The Big Bang model suggests that space, time, matter, and energy all began from a singularity. Before that event, there was no physical reality as we understand it. The philosophical implication is powerful. Whatever caused the universe must be outside space, outside time, immaterial, and immensely powerful. That description begins to resemble what classical theism calls God. Critics argue that we cannot insert God into gaps of knowledge. But this isn't a gap, it's a boundary condition. If time itself began, the cause cannot be temporal. Mathematics supports this. You cannot have an infinite regress of past events in a finite timeline. The universe appears to have a starting point. Now consider information theory. DNA contains coded information, complex sequences that function like a language. In every known case, information originates from intelligence. Computer code requires a programmer. Language requires a mind. The probability of functional genetic sequences arising randomly is staggeringly low. Some researchers estimate that forming even a simple functional protein by random processes is statistically comparable to assembling a fully operational jet engine from a tornado passing through a scrapyard. While evolutionary theory explains variation and adaptation, the origin of the first informational molecule remains deeply debated. The mathematical challenge is clear. Random chemical reactions do not easily produce specified, functional complexity. Atheists often respond by arguing that given enough time, even unlikely events become possible. But time alone does not create direction. Random processes without guiding constraints do not naturally generate complex information systems. Probability is not defeated simply by adding years. If the odds are 1 in 10, 150, extending time within a finite universe does not magically overcome those numbers. Another mathematical argument involves moral realism. Humans across cultures recognize objective moral values concepts like justice, fairness, and human rights. From a purely materialistic worldview, morality reduces to biochemical reactions shaped by evolutionary survival. But mathematics and logic operate independently of biology. 2 + 2 = 4 whether humans exist or not. Similarly, if moral truths are objective rather than subjective preferences, they point beyond matter. The question becomes, can a purely material universe generate objective moral laws, or do such laws imply a transcendent moral lawgiver? Critics may say these arguments don't prove God with 100% certainty, and that's true. Mathematics rarely deals in absolute certainty outside formal proofs. Instead, it deals in probability and inference to the best explanation. The real question is comparative. Which worldview better explains the data? A universe that begins to exist, operates on precisely calibrated constants, contains complex coded information, and supports objective moral truths. Does atheism or theism provide the more coherent explanatory framework? Some atheists argue that invoking God simply shifts the problem. Who designed the designer? But this misunderstands the concept of a necessary being. In classical philosophy, God is not a complex object within the universe requiring assembly. God is proposed as a necessary, timeless foundation of reality. Mathematics itself relies on necessary truths, axioms that are not caused but simply are. The idea of a necessary being parallels that structure. Then there's consciousness. Neuroscience can map brain activity, but subjective awareness, the experience of being, remains one of the hardest problems in science. Purely material systems operate through physical interactions. Yet conscious experience includes intentionality, self-awareness, and abstract reasoning. The existence of rational thought capable of understanding mathematics raises another intriguing question. Why would a blind, unguided process produce minds capable of discovering universal logical truths? If our thoughts are merely survival-driven chemical events, what grounds do we have to trust their reliability in discovering metaphysical truth? None of this means atheists are irrational. Many atheists base their worldview on careful reasoning. But labeling belief in God as illogical may be premature. The mathematical structure of reality appears surprisingly compatible with theism. The unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in describing the universe has puzzled scientists for decades. Why should abstract equations written on paper perfectly predict cosmic behavior? Some argue this harmony makes more sense if the universe is the product of a rational mind. Of course, there are counter-arguments. The multiverse remains a serious proposal in theoretical physics. Evolutionary biology continues to research abiogenesis. Philosophers debate moral realism versus moral anti-realism. The discussion is far from settled. But dismissing theism as mathematically impossible ignores substantial debates within cosmology and philosophy of science. So is atheism illogical? That depends on how we define logic. If logic means strict deductive proof, neither side possesses a complete demonstration. If logic means inference based on probability, evidence, and explanatory power, then theism stands on intellectually serious ground. The fine-tuning of constants, the origin of cosmic order, the existence of information-rich DNA, and the presence of objective moral laws collectively create a cumulative case. In the end, mathematics doesn't shout. It whispers through probabilities, constants, and elegant equations. It does not force belief, but it challenges assumptions. Perhaps the deeper question isn't whether atheism is illogical, but whether we are willing to follow the numbers wherever they lead. Because if reality itself is structured with astonishing precision, then maybe belief in a rational creator isn't blind faith at all. Maybe, just maybe, it's the conclusion that best fits the equation. And here's the twist. Whether you believe in God or not, the universe is mathematical. Its structure is logical. Its laws are consistent. The debate continues. But one thing is certain, this isn't merely a clash of beliefs. It's a clash of worldviews grounded in probability. Cosmology, philosophy, and the deepest questions mathematics can ask. The question isn't just, does God exist? The question is, when you calculate the odds, what conclusion is most reasonable?